The finale of Andor is finally here, and normally I'd say let's get straight into it, but I just want to thank all of you guys for 20,000 subs. Thank you all for the support and love that you've been showing, and if you like the sort of content that I'm making, please also make sure that you hit the bell icon for more notifications. Okay, without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. We begin the episode with Wilmon Pak, son of Salman Pak, building what we will later learn is a bomb. An Imperial shuttle lands on Ferrix and Dedra arrives on the scene alongside two Death Troopers. Death Troopers were of course first introduced in Rogue One, and it's mostly reserved for high-ranking Imperial officials within the Imperial intelligence. Dedra makes her way to the Imperial HQ and we see Biggs huddling in her cell just as a camera turns to watch her, really just feeding into the whole theme that the Empire is constantly watching. Right outside her cell, we find that it's Dedra who is paying close attention to her, and if you zoom in, you can just about make out the screen that Dedra is using to watch Biggs. Dedra gets invited to dinner, but she turns it down, preferring to survey the town before Maarva's funeral. And Dedra's rejection of dinner juxtaposes with what we saw on Aldhani, with the Imperial officials more keen to get to dinner than engaging with their job.
A bit of ceremonial nonsense and we can tuck into a fine table.
Another perfect example of why Dedra is so different compared to the other Imperials. We cut back to Wilmon, who is working on a bomb, and we can see a hologram of his father Salman Pak right here, who was of course tortured and hanged by the Empire. After Brasso gets off work, he meets with Zan, and Zan tells him that Cassian is coming. That Cassian called through the old box line, which might explain why the Empire didn't pick it up. Close by, we see Nerji, who is now a paid Imperial informant. Nerji was of course the person Cassian owed money to back in the first few episodes, a debt that he has since paid off. Nerji tries to get as much information out of Zan as he can through his drink, and Wilmon finishes off his bomb. And what's interesting about Wilmon's character is that he mirrors a young Cassian. Both characters experienced the death of their father at the hands of the Empire via hanging, and both of them at a young age decided to take up arms against the Empire. So it's really interesting to see that as long as the Empire is around and it continues to do what it does, there will always be more Cassians running around, more victims that decide to take up arms against the Empire. Mon Mothma waits outside a bar or a club for Perrin, and she tells her driver that they need some privacy. She then immediately begins to accuse Perrin of gambling, a supposed habit that Perrin used to have. All the while the driver is listening in. Perrin denies the accusations, but Mon Mothma tells him that if he can't stop gambling, then the least he could do is gamble off-world like on Canto Bight. Canto Bight was of course first introduced in The Last Jedi, and is a very well-known gambling world which is frequented by the ultra-rich of the Star Wars galaxy. And all of this is really just a ruse and a way for Mon Mothma to cover her tracks, using Perrin's past as a gambler to provide the driver a false explanation for the missing funds from her account. A false explanation that will find its way to the ISB. And it's also interesting to see how Mon Mothma is now actively using the members of her own family to further the rebel cause, whereas in the beginning of the show she was more concerned with keeping them away from rebel business. It demonstrates an evolution of her character as she begins to leverage whatever she can for the rebellion, a notion that troubled her for much of the season. So funny enough, it's actually the first time that Perrin didn't do anything wrong here. Vel visits Cinta, and Cinta relays to her that an ISB supervisor has landed on Ferrix, and the whole conversation between Cinta and Vel reflects the personal sacrifices each of them have to make. Vel clearly feels left behind by Cinta, who is obsessed with the rebellion, but this obsession has come at the cost of a deteriorating relationship between the two. And this might very well be the moment where the two come to terms with the fact that the relationship isn't working, at least not when they are involved with the rebellion. Again, it's all about personal sacrifice. Cassian finally arrives at Ferrix and he decides to pay a visit to his father's brig, and we get a flashback scene between the two. While cleaning up some old scraps, Cassian's father talks about cleaning off the rust, something which Maarva also talks about later within the context of the Empire. Cassian tries to find Biggs but ends up finding Pegla, who is looking over the place. Pegla was of course the individual that gave Cassian a ship, the same one that allowed Cassian to travel to Morlana 1, and the two sort of ended things on a bad term, so it's nice to see that they are making up here. Cassian learns about Bix's situation and where she's kept. We then get to hear a bit more about Nemik's manifesto. Luthen also arrives on Ferrix, and as we listen to Nemik speak, it becomes really clear where the spirit of the rebellion comes from. And there are some great lines in his manifesto, but my favorite has to be this particular part.
Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that.
The words that Nemik speaks are actually the theme of this episode, and a thesis which is proven right, which we will talk about more later in the video. Overall, it's a very simple but inspiring manifesto, and Nemik's death lends so much more weight to the words he speaks, although Yoda might have something to say about the last part of the manifesto.
Remember this. Try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
Dedra and the Imperial plan for the upcoming funeral and begin to set a trap for Andor. Back at the ISB HQ, Mon Mothma's driver relays what he heard to Superintendent Blevin, and it seems like the false explanation worked. We are then told that Krieger's attack on Spellhouse has occurred and that no one survived. We also learn that Dedra is not happy about the fact that there were no prisoners, and Pendergast gives an explanation why. The reason for no survivors isn't a strategic one but a political one, a decision made to keep the Emperor happy and a statement of intent. In the background, we can see some Arbesh that translates to Imperial saturation, perhaps reflecting Imperial positions on the screen behind Pendergast. Korf spies on Maarva's house and realizes that it's not Brasso taking B out and realizes that they have been played. We then see Cassian in the sewers, and this is the famous tunnel under Rick's Road, which we have heard Maarva talking about in an earlier episode. Brasso meets with Cassian and the two embrace. Maarva leaves a few words for Cassian, further inspiring him down the road of rebellion. He then tells Brasso that he is going to rescue Bix, and Brasso asks,
You gonna take on a full garrison?
which is a real tongue-in-cheek moment and a nice callback to Aldhani. Cyril and Mosk arrive at Ferrix as well. Comically, they decide to switch hats, and I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to achieve there. I think they were trying to swap disguises, but the fact that it made no difference just goes to show how amateurish they are at what they are trying to do. With the arrival of the two, that also means that the whole gang's here. Nurchi spies on Pegla and realizes that Andor must be in the building. Luthen meets up with Vel, and Luthen remains committed to kill Cassian before the Empire can question him. Just then, the anvil sound begins, and much of it is a callback to Episode 3. But where Episode 3 was a few random people clanging metal as a warning, this moment seems a lot more unified, as though the whole town is committed to what is about to happen next. And we even get to see the Imperials slightly panic at the noise, much like how the Pre-Mor authorities did as well. The marching band gets ready, and the whole town begins to walk to the square. In a moment of panic, the Imperials order a perimeter to be set up, and we start to see Nemik's thesis come true, that oppression is a mask for fear. Cassian spots Luthen, and he realizes that there can only be one reason why, which is to kill him. Nurchi tells the Imperials about what he knows. At the same time, Luthen spots Cyril, and we're not exactly sure if he recognizes him from their last encounter back in Episode 3. Dedra decides to find Cassian herself, and Brasso presents Maarva's brick. And this whole moment is so clearly arranged with the Imperials on one side and the people of Ferrix on the other, almost as if the battle lines are being drawn. Bix takes comfort in the music from within her cell, and Cyril spots Dedra like an absolute fanboy. The music slows down a little before picking up again as the people of Ferrix walk towards the Imperials, and this really gave me the chills. Dedra and Korv search the building but find nothing, all the while Cassian is making his way into the hotel. Outside, the people are chanting Stone and Sky, the mantra of Ferrix. The music stops and B plays Maarva's hollow recording. As Maarva gave her speech, it's almost as if she has become a Force ghost. While Luke has the ghosts of Kenobi and Yoda to speak to and take inspiration from, the normal average people have their own version as well, using the pre-recorded holograms to inspire each other. And while Maarva's speech isn't as charismatic as Kino's speech, there's something really heartfelt about it. There is a sincerity that does come across and inspires people nonetheless. The sincerity of this moment is also not lost on Luthen as well. there is a great brief moment where he looks around and realizes what is happening. That right here there is a rebellion being born not in the shadows like what he is trying to do, but out in the open. And there is a whole lot to unpack here, one that I will probably save for another video about Luthen and the rebellion. The Imperials try to end the hologram by covering it with a black cloak, but light ends up shining through. A small moment that is hugely symbolic for the rebellion, that no matter how much the Empire tries to cover it up, light always shines through, bringing it back to the central theme of good versus evil. The Imperial tips B over to end the recording, and he gets laid into by Brasso, who also ends up taking out a few other Imperials. And if you pay close attention, he actually uses Maarva's brick as a weapon to smash one of the Imperials. So I guess in a way you could say that Maarva did get a piece of the Empire after all. A riot breaks out and the anvil starts ringing again. Officer Keysax tells a trooper to stop the ringing, and you can see how such little acts of defiance really gets under the nerves of the Empire. Andor finds Bix, and Cassian gets to see how she really is a shell of her former self. Dedra somehow finds herself in the middle of all of it, and if you slow the footage down, you can actually see some of the local people grabbing the Death Trooper's gun as well. Wilmon throws his bomb, which ends up setting off some grenades. Vel runs into the smoke, and things turn ugly as the Empire tries to catch Wilmon. A massacre ensues, but Wilmon is rescued by Brasso. Unfortunately, there was one casualty, and we see Zan get shot by a stormtrooper. Korv tries to get out of there, but he ends up getting shanked by Cinta, ensuring that her tracks are well covered and that no Imperial would recognize her. Cassian kills a Death Trooper on his way out, and Dedra also ends up pulling out her blaster but gets knocked down as well. On the tower, the Stormtrooper tries to stop the anvil sound but gets Spartan kicked out of the tower.
This is Sparta!
Dedra panics as she is grabbed by a mob but is rescued by Cyril, and for the first time in the season, we see a genuine panic on Dedra's face. For much of the show, we've seen her full of confidence and in control, but here it's really jarring in a good way to see the mixture of fear and panic on her face. Again, going back to what Nemik said about tyranny breaking and leaking, and how authority is brittle. Cyril gets his simp moment, and what's interesting about this moment is that both Cyril and Dedra's characters have now walked a very similar path. Both in their effort to hunt down Cassian end up realizing that they have bitten more than they can chew. Just like Cyril realizes that he is in over his head, Dedra is now facing that very same moment. So it looks like moving forward, Dedra now better understands where Cyril is coming from, and perhaps the both of them will decide to work together. The crew make their way to Pegla's ship, the very same ship that Cassian borrowed back in episode 1. Cassian and Bix find their way there as well, and what we might be seeing here is the beginnings of a local rebel cell. You've got yourself Bix, who is the mechanic, Brasso the bruiser of the group, Wilmon the young naive member, B the mandatory droid, and Jez the mother figure of the group, and possibly Cassian as the leader, which really reminds me of the makeup of the Ghost crew in Rebels. Back on Coruscant, Mon Mothma holds up her end of the bargain and arranges a meeting for a possible arranged marriage, and it remains to be seen what this might bring. As Luthen prepares to depart, he encounters Andor, who has snuck onto his ship. Cassian offers two options to Luthen: allow him to join the rebellion or kill him. And the fact that there is no hesitancy on Cassian's part goes a long way to show how he has grown as a character, because for Cassian there is now the rebellion or nothing at all. The absolute certainty of his mind really just reflects that he is now ready to fully commit to the battle against the Empire. Luthen is obviously somewhat a little surprised by this, but the smile at the end really says it all. That he is happy that for once he could make a decision that could help the rebellion without having to compromise his morals like he did with Anto Krieger. And I think it really ends it all on a very good note. So that more or less concludes— sorry, what's that? There's more? Post-credit scene in Star Wars? Is that even legal?
I will make it legal.
Luckily for us fans, we got a little bit more, and we see a few construction droids working. And the pieces that the droids are working with is the exact same component that Cassian and the other prisoners were working on day in, day out. The pieces that they put together are actually used to stitch the Death Star's radar dish together. And there is something about the way that this is shot that makes it really scary, even though we already know what happens to it in the future. A real credit to the cinematography of this show. So that finally concludes season 1 of the Andor show, and what a ride it has been. I have thoroughly enjoyed every single episode, and the finale was no less different. I think the show is a testimony to what Star Wars can be when it's done right at a very high level, and I'm all here for it. It almost breaks my heart to say it, but that's all for this video and breakdown. Be sure to leave a comment down below, and be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you all once again for 20,000 subscribers, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.